Hey guys, welcome to the Sports Take Show, the show where Matthew Coller and me, Derek Wetmore, take on sports. Today's take on sports is about the Minnesota Vikings and Arizona Cardinals. Matthew, what do you think the best way that the Vikings can slow down future Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald this weekend?
I think it is by using their best corner, Xavier Rhodes. We know that the Cardinals are going to use their top corner, Patrick Peterson, to play against Stephon Diggs, who's got 26 catches in the last 2 weeks. So why not do the same exact thing with Rhodes? We've seen it work with Rhodes against a lot of really good wide receivers in the league this year. I think the most notable performance coming against Odell Beckham Jr., in which Odell Beckham had the fewest yards that he has ever had in a game. And since he played against Rhodes, he's had a really great season. Fitzgerald is one of the all-time greats in the NFL, and I think you have to use your top corner, your best guy. Plus, Rhodes has size. It's one of the things that helps him, and Peterson for this matter too, when it comes to shutting down wide receivers, is that Fitzgerald is extremely good off the line of scrimmage. So if Rhodes can do anything with his length of his arms and his strength to slow Fitzgerald down from getting a clean release, I think that's what he's got to do. I think that's what Mike Zimmer should focus on.
Well, let me throw a counterpoint at you, and this comes not from my own brain, but from the brain of one of our viewers. Matthew, you and I share a YouTube channel, 1500 ESPN Twin Cities. Quick, easy plug. That was cheap. That was low-hanging fruit. But anyways, on that YouTube channel, we do some Vikings videos. And on this week's Vikes Insight, we talked about this matchup. One of our commenters adroitly pointed out that, Rhodes doesn't play in the slot very often, and one of the ways that the Cardinals could keep Fitzgerald away from Rhodes is by sliding him inside and making him a slot receiver for times this weekend. I tend to agree with that assessment a little bit because we've seen Rhodes in the past. Up until last year, really, the Vikings were fairly hesitant to use Rhodes as a shadow corner, that he just wasn't really comfortable playing away from the right side of the field. And to his credit, he can now play both sides of the field, I think, fairly ambidextrously. But the slot, is that a different ballgame in your opinion?
Oh, it definitely is. And I agree with Captain Munnerlyn, who always likes to tell us that the nickel corner spot, or, if you're playing against the slot wide receiver, that you've got the toughest assignment of the day.
Yeah.
You're often going against really good wide receivers in a lot of traffic. I mean, traffic is one of the best ways to throw off that whole shadow or the Revis Island or something like that. When you've got one corner playing against an elite wide receiver, you try to create picks for him. You try to create a lot of havoc in the middle of the field and run him through that to get an opening, because one-on-one on the sideline is probably not going to work out that well. So when the commenter says, well, he's not very good against the slot, I think part of that is just the slot is harder overall. And it kind of takes a specific skill set to be able to do it, which Captain Munnerlyn is really good at. But Captain Munnerlyn is still limited in practice. I don't know if I want him going up against Larry Fitzgerald when Fitzgerald is put in those slot situations. I mean, I think Munnerlyn does a great job as one of the maybe tops at that position, because I think it's become kind of a separate position. But if you're going to line up Fitzgerald there, I want Rhodes against him. And again, when it comes to getting off the line of scrimmage and getting that opening for quick passes and things like that, I mean, Rhodes uses his physical strength so well that, yes, in the slot, the guy can go either way. When you're talking about one of the wide receivers, I mean, they can only go one way, inside, right? They can't go out of bounds. Mm-hmm. So the best corners always use that to their advantage, and that's why another reason why it's so tough in the slot. But you could still be physical with that guy off the line, or they could try playing some zones this week instead to try and throw the Cardinals off instead of just going man-to-man all the way. But I think Rhodes is probably your most qualified guy to go up against Fitzgerald.
Yeah, one of the things that Mike Zimmer brought up this week when we asked about just the concept of shadowing in general. And I'll get a quick health report from you before this video is over. But one of the things Zimmer mentioned is that when you're in man-to-man, if you're shadowing a guy, well, it's easy. You can just sort of match up the rest of the way like you would. To use a basketball analogy, it's like your defense is already set and the offense is coming up the court. But if you're playing in zone and you're trying to shadow somebody, it's like you're scrambling back in transition defense, trying to just find matchups wherever you possibly can. And for that reason, Zimmer said it can be a little difficult because you wind up with slower linebackers trying to cover receivers that are coming across the middle of the field. And that's one of the disadvantages if you're trying to shadow, like with Rhodes on Fitzgerald or Patrick Peterson on Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I think that that's why Eric Kendricks could be so important this week. And you mentioned the health report. Munnerlyn,
yeah, let's get it.
Yep, he was back practicing, and also Eric Kendricks back practicing as well, which is a huge deal. Kendricks, I don't know if we recognized how valuable he was in those first 5 games to slowing down other teams using their running backs out of the backfield, but you don't have to look much farther than the game against Houston when Brock Osweiler tried to get the ball to Lamar Miller on the outside, and Eric Kendricks allowed none of that to go on. And that could be a big deal this week for David Johnson as well, that if you're going to have a running back who can come out of the backfield or even line up in a slot position and create 4 or 5 wide receiver situations, you're going to have linebackers who can cover well. And I think that is Kendricks' biggest asset, and the drop-off is pretty huge to the next best guy if he's out. So Kendricks being back is definitely big. But, I mean, that's the thing. With Larry Fitzgerald, that he's got a lot of other weapons around him too. He still is the number 1 wide receiver, and he's their leading receiver by a lot when it comes to total catches, but he's not all alone out there with Johnson and Michael Floyd and John Brown. They've got some other very good wide receivers that will create quite the challenge for the Vikings defense. The only thing is, I think from watching the Cardinals a bit, they play kind of an older school offense. It's almost like Norv Turner would be proud of them. And I wonder if at some point they will transition themselves into some shorter and quicker passes. That's something to watch this week.